So thankfully, Jimmy Kimmel's show got reinstated. It's coming back next week, but we're still talking about it. Piers Morgan got in late. He had a panel debate about it. Here's an interesting monologue by Tim Pool. Here it is.
Jimmy Kimmel got fired, according to the Wall Street Journal and the Hollywood Reporter, because he refused to apologize. He wasn't planning on apologizing. He, in fact, was planning on furthering the commentary, criticizing MAGA for twisting his words. According to the Wall Street Journal, the executives approached him on his side, saying they were actually going to defend him. But the advertisers and the affiliates were upset over the comments that he made, portraying the assassin as a MAGA guy. When Jimmy Kimmel expressed his desire to further that line that he had pressed the day before, that's when they had a private meeting and decided to pull his show. So I do believe the FCC comments obviously played a role. I think it was multifaceted. But I've said this since cancel culture was more in the news with many on the left getting people canceled on the right. If you own a company and someone says something objectionable, which threatens the existence of your company, I don't care if that person gets fired. If someone at my company was going on social media and posting abhorrent racist things, I'd fire them too. The issue with cancel culture is that people were being fired for things that were not objectionable. There was a Netflix executive who got fired for simply describing the racial slurs they would not allow on Netflix. Papa John got fired and removed from his company, name stripped from universities, for lamenting the fact that the colonel used a racial slur and got away with it. And there was no criticism. In fact, in one instance, a NASCAR driver lost sponsorship because his father used a racial slur in the 80s. That's cancel culture. Pulling Sarah Silverman off a movie because 10 years ago she did a blackface joke, that's cancel culture. Bud Light facing a massive sales backlash and having their beer pulled from stores and bars, Target losing customers and being criticized. This is consumer backlash. So I certainly don't think a teacher who criticizes Charlie Kirk should get fired. What I will add on top of this is the real reason stated by the reporting from various outlets, left and right, was that Jimmy Kimmel was going to continue that line the next day. And that caused concern they would lose more advertisers at a time when Jimmy Kimmel's ratings are down 43% and he's costing them millions of dollars. So if the FCC is to come out and say, we are going to get you taken off the air, that's a bad thing. But I think it's important that we discuss the context around when a business has a right to say you are threatening the...
All right, that was a long one. Let's start with the easy part. Tim Pool's explanation of cancel culture, just with two fun examples. Papa John said the N-word multiple times. Not just the N-word, but the actual N-word. And same with the other guy he mentioned, multiple times at Netflix in board meetings. He said it one time in a meeting. Then HR was like, we should have a meeting about why you said the N-word in our meeting. And then he said it again in the other meeting. The NASCAR driver, that's a true story. That was actually a time where cancel culture went too far. But let's talk about Tim Pool's sources here. He says that journalism from both the left and the right says that Jimmy Kimmel was fired likely independently of Carr's comments. Now let's just go to the Hollywood Reporter right here. All right, this is the reporting that Tim Pool is citing. Now, I don't have access to the Wall Street Journal, but they say something similar as well. I've seen it in Twitter posts. On Monday's episode of Jimmy Kimmel, he mocked MAGA Republicans for scrambling to distance their own ideologies from Tyler Robinson. Right? Blah, blah, blah. Same stuff. Immediately after FCC Chair Brendan Carr's appearance on Benny Johnson's podcast, where he said very directly, we will take the licenses of people that air you and go after you in any way that the FCC has jurisdiction to do so, including with the financial dealings and mergers of various broadcast stations that air Jimmy Kimmel, right? Everything became a bigger swirl. And only after Brendan Carr made those comments did all these advertisers and station owners call up with ABC. Nothing happened before Brendan Carr made any comments. So people like Tim Pool is a chronic liar. I know he reads all these articles. He has a filter in his brain that makes him tell lies. I don't even know how he interprets the stuff the way he does. But yes, this was clearly a coercion. If you didn't know, NRA versus Volo is where we get the standards for coercion nowadays. The threat has to be direct, come from authority, it has to be credible, and it has to be perceived by a rational person as a threat. Those are kind of the standards that they laid out there. and this clearly meets all those standards. But that's all. That's all we have to know here. Now, as for Tim Pool commenting on the financial viability of Jimmy Kimmel tonight, late night as a category is not a moneymaker. ABC has nothing else to replace it. They have no other late night hosts, and if they did bring someone in, they would probably be worse than Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel at least gives them that cultural presence, and I don't know if he loses money. I doubt it. I couldn't find any evidence that Jimmy Kimmel, the show, loses money. I know that they have hundreds of employees there. Costs are very high, but the idea that ABC was just looking for any excuse to fire this guy, and Tim Pool's making the argument that Brandon Carr gave Bob Iger the moral standing to do so. And I don't believe that, especially because he just reinstated him, right? I don't know what factors went into him being reinstated. I think Brendan Carr at the FCC got so much backlash from Republicans themselves. Like Ted Cruz was furious because this is clear coercion. Nobody who supports the First Amendment would support anything that the FCC has done right here. I think that put Brendan Carr in his place and Trump in his place a little bit just by the backlash, right? Even I think most conservatives know that there's something absolutely wrong with this. So there probably won't be any threats going forward. But the fact that Brendan Carr is willing to say that on Benny Johnson's podcast is highly problematic. Of course, the most problematic thing was the responses to Jimmy Kimmel's comment itself, because the comment was 100% true. That is my biggest takeaway from this whole episode that we keep talking about, even though it's kind of boring. But he said something completely true, and everyone just crashed out. Like no critical thought. Like, maybe MAGA people did spend the entire weekend trying to pinpoint the ideology of this guy, so then they can declare civil war on the left side of the political spectrum, right? It's not like Matt Walsh was releasing videos that I made a video on that said exactly what I just said, right? This is a no-brainer. This is a no-brainer conflict, really. That whole Pierce panel, like Bill O'Reilly. Why is Bill O'Reilly defending this? And he doesn't even address the main point that this was coercion. It was jawboning. He probably doesn't even know the standard. He was just like, I don't know why Jimmy Kimmel said that. That made no sense. He should be fired. It's like, that's cancel culture. And Jimmy Kimmel did not say the N-word. Like, very, very different. The Netflix CEO should have been fired. I mean, the communications officer, I don't know what that's called. The CCO, and the other guy, Papa John, of course, should have been fired too, right? This is cancel culture is, it's equal parts good, equal parts bad. Just depends how you apply it. Some people deserve to be canceled. Some people deserve not to be canceled. And the government shouldn't cancel anyone, unless of course they are causing harm, like social media companies did kind of in COVID when they were not regulating misinformation enough, and we saw the dissipating of information that led to a disparity in excess deaths that aligned on the political spectrum, where Republicans had 40+% more excess deaths than Democrats. Like that is just absurd, and there is damages there, and I just that's when cancel culture is very useful, when there are damages. But that's the government side. As far as society goes, we should cancel anyone who voted for Donald Trump. That's my cancel culture. There's no informed, honest person who voted for Donald Trump. It's as simple as that. I think there's a lot of like people with very entrenched ideologies, like in a certain talking point or certain thing that they want, that they're like single issue voters on, like abortion or Israel, and in that case you can justify voting for Donald Trump. But if you're not like ideologically entrapped in any of those two examples that I can think of, then you have no reason to vote for this guy, unless you're voting for the tax cuts. And I understand that, because we live in a democracy and people deserve to vote in their own self-interest. But other than those three categories, You need to be canceled.